Welcome to the July the 25th, 1989 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie, as we bring you back history of Grand Prairie, those who helped us to make history and those that are continuing to live in our city and are very important to it and its environs. This is our history tape number 99, and we're very pleased today to have a very special couple with us, and that is Marshall and Geraldine Page. We want to welcome you all to the show. It's wonderful to have both of you all with us today, Pages.
Thank you, Ruthie. We're glad to be here and glad that you asked us to be on the program.
Wonderful. Now, Marshall Page, we want you to begin our program by looking into your camera and giving us the genealogy history, anything you'd like to tell us about your family. But first of all, we'd like you to give the names of your parents and your mother's maiden name. Would you look out and do that and tell us a little bit about them, please?
Yes, my father's name was Marshall Lafayette Page, and my mother's name was Exer Estelle Howard Page. And my father had 7 brothers and 3 sisters, and they're all dead, deceased now, but I remember I've got to see all of them during my lifetime, of which I'm very proud.
All right. Now, of your parents, where were they born, or did they come to Texas, or were they originally Texans?
My father was born in Abbott, Texas, which is famous for a famous entertainer. Willie Nelson grew up there. And I had an aunt that lived there, and I spent many, many nights visiting with my aunt there.
All right.
And that's where he was born, and he worked all over Texas as a worked the telephone company, and he became, when I was very young, became the telephone manager at Temple, Texas.
Temple, Texas. Okay. Now, how about your mother? Where were the Howards from? Were they from Texas?
They were from Arkansas and moved down to Walnut Springs, and there was a big railroad shop there, and my grandfather and my uncles worked at the railroad shop doing different things. And that's where my dad met my mother there at Walnut Springs, and she was a telephone operator.
Okay.
And that's how they met. And
all right. If they met in Walnut Springs and married there, how long did they live in the Walnut Springs area before you came along as their firstborn?
Well, when they got married, they didn't live there. My grandparents, of course, lived there. And,
all right.
My dad was working for the telephone company, and I think he worked at Ennis and Mart.
All right.
So when I was and then he quit and worked for the railroad up in Toledo, Ohio. And I was looking through my papers, and I found the telegram that my uncle sent to my dad, and says, son born, mother and son doing well. And so my dad quit his work and came back to Texas and went back to the telephone company. And that's when he started living in Texas ever since then.
All right, now tell us the magic date of your birth and where you were born, Marshall.
I was born at Walnut Springs, and I was born December 29th, 1920.
All right. Now, that's a good year. That's my birth year, so you know that's a good year.
That was a good year.
All right. Now, born in Walnut Springs, and when your dad came back and rejoined the telephone company, did you all remain around in the Walnut Springs area? Where did they take you to on your sojourn, and where did you go to school first?
Well, we moved to Temple when I was about 3, and
all right.
That's where I started to school, and I went there through the 7th grade, and then they transferred my dad to Austin, Texas, and moved down there, and I finished up my junior high schooling and my high school studying, and then I graduated and went to the University of Texas there at Austin.
All right. Now, you had no brothers and sisters?
No brothers and sisters.
No brothers and sisters. So as the only child, you were very spoiled, weren't you?
Well, I wouldn't say that.
All right, now, Marshall, growing up in the Temple, Austin area, did you have, since your folks didn't live on a farm and all of this good stuff, what did you do? Did you have an outside job, or did you ever carry a paper route? What did you do as a young person?
Well, we I didn't have it. Well, I had a paper out when I was in Austin.
All right.
I helped throw the afternoon paper, and that was one of my first jobs, and we had 86 subscribers, I think, and we threw it in a large area, and it came around through to a store, and that was our last customer. We laid the paper up on the counter, and he had the most wonderful ice cream, and we had to have some ice cream every day. And our first month, we didn't make a thing. It all went for ice cream at this Mr. Ravenelli's store. But after that, we learned better, and so we began to save the money a little bit.
And as you were growing up and going to school there in Austin and finally to the university, did you have any hobbies as a young person? What was your main hobby?
Well, I started music when I was 14, and I got one of my friends got a guitar for Christmas, and on my 14th birthday, which came 4 days later, I got my guitar, and that's kind of when I really started in my musical career, and just started playing it then. And
when you were going to the University of Texas at Austin, what were you studying, generalities, or did you major in music?
No, I majored in Spanish, of all things.
All right.
I was in junior high, and I had a knack for Spanish and other languages, so I just took Spanish all through high school, and my degree is in Spanish, and my minor is in German.
In German, and your love is in music, right?
That's right.
Other than Jerry, right?
That's right.
Oh, okay. Well, now that we have you in Austin at college and maybe looking into music just a little bit, before we do any more on you and get into further into your musical career, let's let you sit in abeyance a minute. Now let's talk to Geraldine. Miss Jerry, would you like to look out into your camera and tell us about your parents and your brothers and sisters?
Well, my father was Lucius Artemus Gleaton, and my mother was Lucy Jane Neighbors Gleaton.
All right.
And my father came from Alabama,
Okay.
and I'm not sure when, they married, but anyway, there were 6 children.
All right.
My oldest brother, Hayes, is deceased, and my sister is the second child, and she lives in Gustine, Texas, which is Comanche County.
What is her name?
Eva Bell
Eva Bell.
Robinson.
Okay. And the next?
The next one is Cap Gleaton, and he lives in Comanche. And the next one is Neighbors, and he lives in Comanche.
All right.
And the next brother is Talmadge, and he lives in Fort Worth. And then I live, of course, in Grand Prairie. I'm the youngest of 6 children.
And you are the baby girl.
Yes, I am.
And you were spoiled too as a baby girl. Probably. All right. Now, tell me about when and where you were born, if you'd like to give us your birthday, and where you went to school as a little kid.
Well, I was born in Gustine, Texas, in October the 20th, 1922. And I went to school all my life at Gustine, Texas, and graduated at Gustine.
All right. And you graduated from Gustine, and when you finished there, and Gustine is in which county?
Gustine is in Comanche County.
Comanche County.
And my
okay.
father built the schoolhouse where I went to school.
All right.
My father was a carpenter and contractor.
All right, carpenter and contractor.
And the school was built in 29. It's still there. It's a
All
little
right.
red brick school. It's still there.
All right, now your mother, Lucy Jane Neighbors, when you were growing up in Gustine, did she work out of the home? Did she do anything
No,
other than...
she had a full-time job, I think, the household and minding the children.
Yes, that was busy work, wasn't it? All right, and after you graduated from high school in Gustine, what happened to Geraldine then?
Well, during World War II, I graduated in 42, and I went to work at North American when this plant in Grand Prairie was North American. This isn't my first time to live here.
All right.
And I worked there about 2.5 years. Then
What department did you work in?
material procurement and material control in the filing department.
All right.
And then from there, I went to Fort Worth, and I worked for Williamson-Dickey a long time
Okay.
in Fort Worth. Then I went home.
Now,
And
home was back to Gustine.
Back to Gustine.
All right.
I decided I needed to go back and see after my mother. She wasn't in good health at this time, and while I was, this time I took a course in photocoloring, and I was making my own living like that. When I finished this course, and I had just finished this course when I met Marshall.
All right. Don't get to Marshall yet. Now, you have in your hand a pamphlet that has something to do with some of your ancestors. And before we get away from the Pages, the Gleatons, and the neighbors, I'd like for you to tell us what that is. Hold it up and tell us what the meaning of this is to your history.
My grandfather, William Joel Neighbors, was a Texas Ranger from 1878 to 1892 in Comanche County.
Uh-huh.
And he helped settle Comanche County. One of my cousins went to this
sesquicentennial,
and she sent me this in honor of our grandfather.
Well, he was very famous, and that was in Comanche County.
Yes, it was.
Oh, that is great. All right, now we're going to leave you for a few minutes. We have you out of high school, working around at North American and the Sojourns, but we don't want you to meet Marshall yet because this is going to be important that we make this tie-in just exactly right. Right, Marshall?
Right.
Now, Marshall, we have here a photograph of you. Since you were into music, why don't you hold this up right about where your microphone's located and see if we can get a shot with the camera on this. And this is Marshall Page as a young man with a guitar group. Is this where you got your really beginning as a musician with this group? And what year was this?
This was in the early 40s.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
I'm sitting here with my steel guitar, and this is William Peel here, and these are two brothers, Tommy Ayers and Chester Ayers. And
Okay.
he is famous in that he is the great nephew of Norman Vincent Peale.
Oh,
He
that
lived
is
in Austin.
wonderful. All
And we
right.
played a lot together, and we went, in 1948, we went to Nashville, Tennessee.
All right.
As a group to play some.
Mm-hmm.
And we took that picture. This is the ones that went with us. Well, we went together in a
All
car.
right. Now, let's talk just a little bit about some of this other genealogy that you have here. You have some very famous relatives, and I believe this is probably the one that is the most famous on the signing of the Declaration. Would you show the name and give us the name of your ancestor there?
All right. It's Thomas Stone, and here, this is the Declaration of Independence, and here is his signature right under John Hancock's.
And how is he related to you, Marshall?
He's one of my uncles, I guess, way back.
Great uncles, back down the line. All right. Is there anything else in your genealogy that is noteworthy that you'd want to put on this television show that's very important, that means a lot to you?
Well, here is a picture of Thomas
Mr.
Stone. I'm sorry. Thomas Stone is right here. This is a picture of the man that
did the signing.
Did the signing, and it said he died in 1787.
All right, now this is a very important looking document. Would you like to tell us about that while we're here? If you can hold
All
that
right,
up for the
this is-
camera, very still for the camera.
This is my seventh great grandfather, my great grandfather, and he lived from 1603 to 1660, and he was prominent in Maryland, and this is his signature right here. And it said that I can't read it upside
All right,
down,
all right.
but this was taken from the archives. One of my ancestors.
What name was this? Is this a stone also?
Yeah, that's looks like William Stone.
William Stone, so he's probably related to this stone that signed the Declaration of Independence. Well, that's wonderful. Now that we have all of your genealogy of the important people in your archives, would you like to tell us how you met Geraldine? And I know that we have one picture down below here where you all were married with musical instruments and all this. Tell us how you met Geraldine.
Okay. May I digress just for a minute?
You may.
All right. My grandfather was John Page, and he lived in Bowling Green, Kentucky, or around in that area.
All right?
And he met this girl, Elizabeth Dawson, and they wanted to get married. And I don't think her family, like a lot of families, they didn't think too much of him.
All right?
And so she lived in a house that was, I've seen a picture of it. It's a long house, you know, with a roof, slanting roof that goes all the way back. And her room was right in the front. And there's a window, and she could get out on the roof of the front porch. And he came up one night and on his horse, and he came up to the edge of the porch, and he hollered at her a little bit, and she crawled out the window and walked down the roof and got on the horse behind him, and they started out for Texas.
That is wonderful.
And then I think later on they sent for a lot of their things, but they came all the way to Texas, and he bought a farm, and that's when they started working. But that's kind of interesting that they
Yes.
sneaked off like that.
Yes, all the way to Texas.
All the way to Texas.
All right, that is wonderful. That's a wonderful history. Now tell us how you, since that was a very exciting romantic adventure that your grandfather had, tell us how you met Jerry.
Well, I was living in Walnut. After the war, my parents had retired during the war, and I came back after the war and lived there with them. And I played at her church, and there's a roller rink over at Meridian, and there was a piano there, and when they didn't play the music, you know, for the skating, I'd sit there and play. And so this band came over there one night, and their piano player couldn't come. And this man at the roller rink says, I know a man that can play. And so they called me, and I went over there and played, and I joined the band right that night. And I went over and started playing with them on the radio station.
All right,
And that was in about 1948.
all right.
And so I continued, and so I guess I need to let her talk in a few minutes, but she heard me playing. She heard our program one day.
Would you care to let me tell this?
All right.
you go ahead now.
We're going to let you tell
Okay.
this part then, Jerry.
All right.
I had never cared for country music. This is what is funny, you know, about, anyway, I happened to turn the radio on one day, and I heard this band, and this piano player was real good. So I got to listening to that, to hear him play every day. And I happened to mention this to one of my girlfriends, and she says, I know the bass fiddler that plays in the band. Says, I went to school with his children down close to Hamilton. And she said, I need to go to Hamilton on business. At that time, there was a bus. Gustine was a little bitty town. And there was a bus came down, about 9:30 of the morning, and you could catch it and then come back in the evening around 4:30.
All right.
The radio program was at 11 o'clock. So we decided to go down and go visit the radio program. So she introduced me to the bass fiddler. And I said, who is your piano player? And he says, Marshall Page. Do you want to meet him? And I said, is he married? I didn't want to get mixed up with anybody that had a bunch of girlfriends, you know.
You bet.
So anyway, he said, no, he's not married. And I thought, well, he's probably got a girl everywhere, you know, and I'll never see him again. And we didn't even start dating, you know, right away. You know, it was this was about July, and it was later on in the summer, you know. But that's how it all started.
You found him at the radio station. I think that is wonderful. And then where did you all marry?
We married at Gustine.
In Gustine,
Yes,
Texas.
at the Methodist Parsonage.
At the Methodist Parsonage. That's wonderful. And how long did you stay in Gustine?
We never lived in Gustine. They don't let him have about 3 days off for our honeymoon.
All right.
And we had our apartment all fixed up in Hamilton. And we lived in Hamilton about 3.5 years.
All right.
We left Hamilton about Thanksgiving of 1952.
All right. And where did
Came
you
up
go
here.
in 1952?
Well, we came up in this area.
All right.
And we lived over in Oak Cliff for a short time.
What were you doing for a living then, Marshall?
My cousin got me a job at LTV.
All right.
And so we stayed up here a short time, and then she went back to stay with her mother. Our son was getting ready to be born, and she wanted to go back and stay down there with her mother.
All right.
And so I stayed up here and worked, and she went back and stayed with her mother. And so one Friday evening I went home, and when I got down there it was dark, and I saw a light in the hospital, and I said, I wonder if that's what I think it is. And so I went in, and sure enough, there was Jerry with a little baby, and he was so pretty I thought he was a little girl.
All right.
And,
And your firstborn son and only son, right?
Uh-huh.
All right. Let's let Jerry tell his name, shall we?
All right.
All right. Jerry, tell us the name of your son.
His name is Bobby Lewis Page.
All right. And where did he go to school? Here in the Grand Prairie area?
He's never known anything else except Grand Prairie. We came here in '53, and he was 3 weeks old.
I see. Okay. And then he grew up and went to school here and finally married. And would you give us his wife's name? And then we want you to tell us whether or not they have any children.
Her name is Carolyn Dale. It was Brown.
All right.
And they have one son, Clint Lewis Page.
All right. Let's see. What do I need to ask you next following this? Now that we have your grandson on the set with us nearby, for the rest of our interview, shall we bring him up here between us and let him stand between us for the rest of our show? Would you like to do that, Clint Page? Would you like to come and stand up here by your grandparents? Okay, Clint, can you come down just a little here so that we can be sure that we have you in our picture? All right. Now that we've gotten rid of all of the family ties and all of our genealogy, we need to talk to Marshall just a little bit about his affiliations here in Grand Prairie, Texas. I know that you all are in clubs. Would you name some of the clubs that you're interested in, especially the one that you're the president of?
That's the Golden Age Club. And we've attended that quite a while, and at one of our meetings, we have 2 meetings a month, and at one of them we give out a plaque for the Senior Citizen of the Month.
Uh-huh.
And in September of '88, it's October of '88, I'm sorry, I was a Senior Citizen of the Month and got a real nice plaque.
All right.
And they asked me if I would be president next year, and I said to myself, how could I refuse after they did that to me? And so I was installed in April, and at our first meeting in the new Senior Citizen Center.
Oh, great.
It opened on April the 3rd, and our first meeting was in April the 5th.
So you had a new place to start, right?
I had a new place to start. And so I'm president of that, and we're doing well. We have good attendance at our meetings, and we also belong to AARP.
All right.
And we do that, and we...
where do you all go to church?
We go to the First United Methodist Church,
All right.
and we're in the Pacesetters Sunday School class.
Oh, that is wonderful. All right, now let's talk with Jerry just a little bit. We're going to leave the Sunshiners till last, since you all are both involved in this. As a mother and a wonderful Methodist, have you had responsibilities in teaching classes or anything, or you just belong to different classes in church, Jerry?
No, what I have done, I'm also a photographer.
All right.
That is one of my hobbies. And when Brother Bob Young was there, I started taking the pictures when we had a christening or when somebody joins the church for the church paper. I did this nearly 10 years, and I still help out with it.
Well, that is wonderful.
And I'm also a past president of the American Legion Auxiliary.
All right.
I was president in bicentennial year.
That was wonderful. All right, now, Marshall, let's get back to you about the Sunshiners and possibly your role in the American Legion. You're a member of the American Legion?
Yes, I'm a member, and I've been every office that we had. When the attendance was low, well, we just swapped office, and I've been commander and vice commander and adjutant, the secretary, and the treasurer, and just nearly any office you can name. We held it together, and it's coming back now stronger.
Yes, with Cloyd Pinson, it's been a wonderful change, hasn't it?
It sure has been a change.
Oh,
but,
that is great.
She was commander of the auxiliary the same years that I was commander
President
of
of
the
the auxiliary, sir.
That's good.
President of, not commander.
She was president of the auxiliary the same years that I was
The commander.
of the Legion.
All right, now tell me about y'all's role in the Sunshiners. The Sunshiners go all over the world. Do you still play with them in the Sunshine Band?
Yes, we do. Edith Stinson started that, and we didn't get involved right at first, but shortly thereafter we both joined, and we've been very active since then. And since I've retired, we can go, to nearly every time we play. And since we both play lead instruments, that we kind of help them get along. And Ray Stark was the violinist for a long time, but he's in bad health. He and Sarah are both in bad health. And so I've kind of taken leadership as far as planning the programs on a lot of the.
All right, now what instrument do you play mostly now for the Sunshiners? We know that you started out with the piano. That's how Geraldine found you. But what do you play now?
I play the electric mandolin.
All
That
right.
is the mandolin with a pickup so that you can hear it. And the reason I do so, we have 5 guitars, and so that's something different.
All right. Jerry, what do you play with the Sunshiners?
Well, right now I'm playing keyboard. I started out, I think, harmonica, and then I played a melodica. It's Bahorner. It's a little thing that you blow. It has a keyboard kind of like an accordion.
Uh-huh.
And I have played concert bells.
Of all of the excitement that's happened to you all, I know that there was a time when you sold Watkins products. Do you still do that?
Yes, we're active in selling Watkins.
And
products.
Watkins pepper and Watkins vanilla, my very favorite, and that's really how I came to know you all a lot better, is because you all were the Watkins people here in Grand Prairie, Texas, and I just wanted to let them know, even though you were retired, you weren't really retired, because you're busy doing all of these good things, especially with the Sunshiners, the Golden Agers. Do you have anything? We have about 2 minutes left, and I'd like to give 1 minute to you, Marshall, and look out into your camera and tell them how it's been to make your life here in Grand Prairie up until this time. Would you do that for us?
Well, we've had a wonderful life here. We've seen Grand Prairie grow, and I feel like that we've grown with it by being active in so many things that you get back what you put into anything. And we've been active in so many clubs and things that it just enriched our life. Well, it's just a whole lot.
That's wonderful. All right, Jerry, would you like to speak to the same thing and let us know where your son lives and your grandson lives, and now that he's visiting you here today, would you like to do that for the final part of your record?
Well, our son lives here. He always has. And he works for Roadway.
All right, that's great. And how about your life here in Grand Prairie, Texas?
Oh, we've enjoyed it. We've got lots of friends, and I like Grand Prairie.
Would you like to say, Marshall, any one person or persons that have really influenced your life a lot? We have half a minute left, and I'm going to give it to you.
Bob Young have to be my answer, Ruthie, because he gave me so many chances to do things for the church, and entertainment and working for the church in various things.
And we certainly miss him here in Grand Prairie, Texas, don't we?
We surely do.
He's over in Fort Worth and doing a good work over there. Well, I want to take this opportunity to thank both of you all, Marshall and Geraldine Page, and also for bringing Clint Page along with you, your grandson, who's been very nice and quiet and very obedient today. And we want to thank you for adding to our history show today. And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.